by the way.
Okay, well, we're live. So the poll was DPS shit tool.
Welcome to Game of Nodes, a weekly podcast on the Cosmos from independent validator teams. Hello, welcome to Game of Nodes, a weekly podcast on the Cosmos from independent validator teams. And as you probably guessed from that intro, Noel got set up but spotted it before it was too late to say the thing that you were probably already going to say. With us this week, we have Ethan Frey, the what would you say, founder, creator,
father of
CosmWasm,
inventor, whatever. But yeah, father of CosmWasm. It's a baby.
Who we're going to hopefully not expose our ignorance too much. Well, we'll talk about some of the motivation behind that and some of the broader sort of Cosmos topics, because Ethan also is a bit of an OG in the Cosmos space as well. So I'm sure there are any number of topics, and Null, there are some topics in the spreadsheet in case you get lost. So
I haven't even loaded it.
if you have any questions for Ethan, drop them in the chat and we'll pick them up as we go along, as well as we find spots for them. So yeah, that's pretty good. So anyway, yeah, thanks very much for joining us, Ethan. We'll kick it straight off with like probably the most obvious question, which is like, how did you actually get started in crypto in the first place? Like, what was your in?
I'll take the short story here. My in was basically I was not so turned on early crypto. I thought it was cool tech, but when someone was telling me you had programmable money to get any rules you wanted, and you could make money, like it was basically governance. It was basically you have community governance issued money. That's how he made it. So rather than the bankers making money, you could have like whoever runs a childcare makes sprints of money, stuff like that. And all kinds of crazy rules and money. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Money's program. That concept just like red pilled me. You can totally reinvent society because Bitcoin's cool. It's electronic money, but like really just changing the rules of money and be money that's malleable, programmable material. That should blow my mind. That was 2014. That was before Ethereum, right? This stuff was not possible, but I got the idea and just kind of led me to find out Tendermint and kind of got in the Cosmos because I felt that was like a way of building this. I tried to build this stuff in 2016, 17.
Right, and you actually worked at Tendermint right back in the day as well.
Definitely, I was like, besides Jay and Ethan Buckman, I was the first dev working there. There's some marketing people before that. Peng was there also early on designing. Brian Crane started with me, I think, the same time, January 2017. It was an interesting ride. Suddenly, I went from a normal job to being paid with we'll just pay you in Bitcoin because you don't have a bank account. I'm like, what?
Huh? Ethan, how'd you find Tendermint like back then? Like, what kind of drew you to it, and how did you even get involved initially?
So I mean, the guy that red pilled me, this guy Daniel, who was Coin anyway, go on that one. He was trying to imagine something way beyond Tendermint, actually, kind of beyond blockchain, even post-blockchain, something like a holochain maybe even. But he was throwing me stuff. He kept throwing me links to various projects. And one of the Ethereum, I looked at Ethereum, was interesting. The other one that got my eye was Eris Industries. So I don't know if any of you are really old school here, but in 2015, there's something called Eris Industries, where Ethan Buckman used to work. It turned into Monax later on, and I was trying to make legal contracts. And that was what Ethan Buckman was, and they were using like Tendermint 0.1 or something. And Ethan Buckman later left them in 2016 to join Jay Kwan on Tendermint to actually build Tendermint out. And so I was like looking at that stuff, and then I was trying to figure out, they taught myself Go to get involved in it. But that time, Tendermint was their own product. And I started messing around with it. It just seemed the right way of doing it. I tried to write Solidity. I looked at Solidity. I'm like, this isn't possible. How do you test it? How do you know it's working? There's no bugs? And there's like the bugs galore everywhere, right? Like, how do you build solid testable software with this? And then I looked at this like, oh, it's Go. I can write solid testable software in Go. Like that actually makes sense. I would actually trust me something complex there. I think that's proven. It was a little slow. I thought the Cosmos Decay would launch a little faster than it did. Mm-hmm. But yeah, definitely the idea of actually building solid software, these complex systems you want to build, you cannot build them slowly. Really, it's so hard. They get too complex.
So, I have a question. So starting out, right? So you've decided that you want to start working on this project. Like, it seems like a pretty big task to undertake. So, like, how did you get started? How did you plan it, and how did you get started in it? And did you put together a team, or did you just start hacking away on it yourself?
You mean Cosmos or CosmWasm?
Sorry, CosmWasm, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
CosmWasm, we had a hackathon. So we got a bunch of people that came together. It was like 5 CTOs came together around some drinking beers. So what the fuck were you do? Let's build Wasm contracts. That's fun. And we did. I didn't sleep at all. I closed my eyes for 2 hours, maybe an hour. Lots of cool mate. And somehow ended up with this working by the end of Sunday evening.
Wow.
I just have time. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And so after that, I'm like, dude, they say it grants the winning team, dev grant to the winning team, right, to work on this stuff. So went and applied the grant. I said, hey guys, let's all work on part time. We have other jobs. Let's work on part time. And no one else wanted to really. They all said they're too busy. So I said, fuck it, I'll just quit my job and work on this.
It's awesome.
I don't know. I kept a contracting gig aside for Regen for the first few months. I was like doing that part time and doing Regen part time, and then by like January 1st, 2020, I said, I have like I don't know. I have like a month pay left on this grant. I'm just gonna quit all my jobs, work only on this thing. It's great. At that point, Simon jumped in a little bit. He just quit his job as well and said, I'll work for a few months for free. I think it's a cool project. So Simon Warta jumped in. The two of us are just coding this alone. And basically unfunded. Then the pandemic happened, and no one was around, and no one's like, ICF was in meltdown mode the whole time. Like I was like, okay, hey, are the grants running out? People like it. The prototype's working. People are excited about it. Like starting to build a community. Can you give me like a larger grant to build it out more? And they're like, sorry, you're too down the list. We have a meltdown. Jane, Ethan Buckman, and AIB is collapsing. We don't care about you. Basically, like come back in 6 months, right? Which they did. 6 months later, I came back and they actually gave me some money, which is cool. Us the money to build this thing for the rest of 2020. But it's kind of hard to hear that when you're like, dude, I'm broke. I'm burning my credit cards down and I'm doing this cool thing. Everything's just the future of Cosmos is awesome. But like, I can't get any cash for it. So that was like a mad dash of like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I didn't give up then, honestly. I don't know. I must have been like just stubborn or crazy or something.
So I guess now the landscape has changed vastly, especially with getting grants for your work now, right? Like since those days that you've had obviously newer networks like Juno and a lot of other networks come on that are using CosmWasm and sort of dependent on its development. And I imagine they're like, tipping into the pool to help that keep moving along as well. But they've got the Interchain Foundation now too, right? Which helps out in that regard, yeah.
Well, the ICF was the Interchain Foundation. ICF wasn't the
wait,
really...
sorry, InterWasm, sorry, not Interchain.
InterWasm doesn't exist. So now we're getting drama. Now it's not drama sign. So yeah, Interchain was really helping out in the beginning. Then we hit like got T-Grade gave us money, and then we got some from Terra, even Osmosis, now Juno, as various users of this have given us significant chunks. And I'm definitely very appreciative of all these grants. So it's kind of interesting going around knocking doors and seeing where the grant can come from this 6 months. But there's definitely doors open. So it's really friendly. I've been really since we've got established, since people picking up since late last year, it's definitely like there's lots of opportunities and lots of people very, very happy to keep us working. But so InterWasm DAO doesn't exist. InterWasm doesn't. It was an idea we launched a year ago. So there's like this idea of building it out, and so we had Kun, who's working with us, went off to spin it into DAO, and had people that had like vocally pledged this stuff. They're going to build DAO to do it, and I don't know what happened, honestly. The idea is out there to fund these grants and stuff like that, not for us as much as Confio, but for like a lot of other people building cool tooling out there. A lot, I think, of what Juno ended up doing, like Juno and stuff like that. So I think, I don't know, he ended up basically working on Juno projects, and then I think just never continued with this. I think his hack Juno and the Juno dev grants was enough for him and everyone else. So yeah, so it's a meme. InterWasm's a meme.
So just a plug, right? Talking about grants and development and cool projects, right? So obviously, like you say, CosmWasm was born out of a hackathon, right? So anyone out there listening with a cool idea, just know that there is good money available in Hack Juno. So if you want to develop something awesome and you want to get it funded, there's various funding opportunities in Juno. And if you've already built something awesome, there's Hack Juno to get a reward for that and keep you going. So just a little plug, because the whole landscape on funding has changed and there's a lot of it available around the place. So definitely know that. So sorry, had to throw that in there.
No, it's good. It's an important thing. I mean, the whole landscape has totally changed. I think this is kind of crazy because it was like back in 2019 when I did the hackathon, it was the Cosmos Hub. It was the Cosmos Hub. That was it, right?
That was it,
and there was a bunch of projects that kind of waiting to launch, waiting for things to come out there. And I think the few came out that year. And then they're all sitting there in their own little silos because IBC wasn't working. And it was only really, in beginning of 2021 when IBC came out that the Cosmos really took life. So for a while, it was like, it was just a hub and then a few other people doing their things never really took off. And then when the IBC came out, that was a whole like explosion. So that was a year and a half ago. The Cosmos actually could scale. They actually said, okay, now I'm not just building a little chain nowhere, I'm building this whole concept. So until then, it was really only the ICF that was funding anything. Like anything. And the Cosmos community pool. And that was like so many things. It's amazing to see like how many different chains have their own dev grants, their own programs, their own community pools. I think, Juno seems the most just focused on CosmWasm cool stuff. So I just threw out that DAO for me is a really cool project that got somehow financed because it's like, I wish to build this and never could find grants to build governance stuff ever. It's like something that is needed, but no one ever pays for. Like everyone pays for DeFi shit or like faster databases or like, I don't know, some ledger signing up, but like governance is like always like super essential foundational stuff, but like always on the bottom of everyone's list to pay for. So I'm like cool that like the junior community actually came together and paid for that. It's pretty awesome.
I love that, like to that end, they've more or less taken, the early success of Juno and then just kept driving home more development around, things that they think are going to make a difference in the future, and especially, with Jake and DAO, like he's always driving that. So you said like back in the start, it was you and Simon grinding away. I'm curious, was that like, did you guys meet up every day and talk about ideas and go through it? Or was it that like an internet relationship that you guys were grinding through that through GitHub?
No, it was the internet. We knew each other. Like I met him a few times. He worked at another company for that together remotely. We met up like, I don't know, 4 or 5 times in person maybe before that. And I think we met in November of 2019. Actually, last time I saw him before the whole pandemic craziness started. And then it was cool. We talked about it. He liked the idea of CosmWasm, hacking it. Maybe in a few months, like I'll have some free time, quitting my job soon. Like let's do this together. I'd like to work on it a little bit. And and then they did it. And basically, it's all just GitHub. Yeah, really. I don't know. What do you have? We didn't have Discord or I don't even know how we communicate. We didn't have Slack back in the day. Maybe it was Discord. I'm not even sure how we DM'd each other. It was just maybe it was straight up GitHub. I don't even know if we did any like sort of messaging except for GitHub. Honestly. Like,
I'm wondering if people still use Slack. Is that something that people still use?
Yes.
Yeah.
As I've discovered in the last 2 weeks, yes.
I've never used it in my life.
Maybe ARC too. That's what Mud said. Yeah, that's probably right.
So, Ethan, you say like everything kind of kicked off about a year and a half ago, right? Which is when heavy sort of development started in the whole Cosmos ecosystem. I think like probably so you might have the same story as this, you Super, that that's about the time that I found the space as well. Is that around when, and maybe you too, Schultz? I think Frey might have been around a little bit before that, or maybe even found it at the same time. Were we all on the same boat here? We all come in about a year and a half ago?
Yeah, about Feb or a little bit earlier, 2020.
Yeah, I think I landed in March.
2021, sorry.
March 21 is when I landed.
I think that's about whenever I got in as well.
Yeah.
I think it was definitely COVID times. I remember that is kind of where I started, but I don't think I started validating on Osmosis until 21. I think right after that Genesis. I think that was the first one I was validating on.
You went straight to Osmosis, really?
Yeah, and kicked out before.
Wow, I didn't know that.
How do you guys think? Like, do you think that we would have had the same sort of acceleration in development and interest if it wasn't for COVID? Do you think that sort of kicked the ball along in terms of crypto and people's interest, having nothing else to do?
A little bit, but I think in Cosmos, IBC is also like not to be underestimated. So I've held I held Atom from like 2019, maybe end of 2019, and you could see like the interest and the volume like really go up after IBC happened, but it did actually, like a lot of crypto, it dipped off at the beginning of the pandemic, and then the price went up because people were sitting around at home messing around with crypto, right?
That's right.
So
yeah, 2020 was interesting actually. That was like this whole DeFi summer, remember, in this DeFi 2.0 in Ethereum. That really, I think for me, it was like we're sitting around. It was kind of the doldrums of, I'm tired of what was it? Atom sitting around $3, $4, $5 an atom for a long time, up and down, like 3 and 5. It hit 6, you're like, oh yeah, it's high. Oh, down again. And then once that hit, that summer actually came up and like hit 8 and stayed over 8. I was like excited. I was like over 8. There's actually money flowing in. I think that whole like last part of 2020 was like this side effect of Ethereum kickoff. There's kind of this like all the people coming to crypto, Ethereum's taking off. The pandemic was at home playing with crypto. It's coming up, and that was this wave. It went up to like 8 or 10 based on that wave. And I think it was IBC that really just like threw it another gear. It was good, good timing for it. Good timing for IBC.
Definitely, yeah. Because
I was going back through some notebooks recently. I was throwing some stuff out, and I found a journal entry from just before COVID, when I saw the last time I saw Jake before COVID, and I wrote something like, "Jake won't shut up about Cosmos, but I bought some Atom a while ago. Maybe that'll shut him up," or something like that. I had this quite pithy like line in my notebook. And so like I have this really distinct, like, just really like top of my head because I saw it a few days ago. I was like, oh, so that's how long I've been holding Atom.
To be honest,
so is Jake Hartnell got you in there?
Yeah, because I think it was him and Shane were running a validator on the hub, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of Stargaze too. I think they started that.
Yeah. It was around that sort of time. He started saying to anybody who knew him, "Oh, you should run a validator on Cosmos Hub." And I looked into it and I was like, "Okay, yeah, just like grab a bunch of servers and spend tens of thousands of dollars to buy in or something." And I was like, I think it was before I started contracting properly. And I was just like, "This is a lot of work and a lot of money. I'm going to let the people that know what they're doing here continue to do what they're doing."
How much has it changed in like?
I was gonna say, didn't you just do the same thing like 2 weeks ago?
So
isn't that you could restate the same exact thing for another project I think that just started a couple weeks ago. Yeah,
but that's just but I think that's all of technology, isn't it? Like you hang around in any space, like as an engineer or as a node operator in our case at the moment, or as an ops engineer or anything like that, and you're on a constant cycle of maybe a year to 2 years where every 2 years you're back in the same boat, feeling like a noob, like what the fuck is all this stuff? I don't understand anything, and just needing to confront your own inadequacies again. That is the mental health conundrum of working in technology, I think.
I think it's more of a front-end thing.
What's
front-end engineers have to deal with that. Back-end engineers, not quite as much. We have like a 10-year turnover point, I think.
I don't know. Do you want to write me a startup using Ruby on Rails?
All right, I'll take it. All right.
I mean, but even in like what because I've done a lot of FP, which I don't fucking shut up about, I know, but like, when I first started working in Clojure, modern Lisp on the JVM, 2014, you're like, JVM language, fine, cool, that's still a thing people do. You want to build a Clojure project now, you'd be like, it's Clojure script node or nothing. You'd just be like, JVM, are you fucking kidding me? I'll just write it in Rust instead, or Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like even back-end languages have changed quite a bit in the last few years. I think Rust is a big driver for that. Like
Rust
the
is huge.
ergonomics, you know?
Rust is a funny thing. You love it or hate it. Like when people see it and you smash your head against it and you run away. Once you get over that hump, it's like it's such an amazing language. I was the first time I tried playing with it, I was like, this is hard. I tried the compiler. And I sat down and actually I did tutorials, but I hadn't really stuck it until CosmWasm, like me learning Rust as well. So that was a fun experience, like not easy one, but like it was funny. After 6 months, it was like I really felt like it became natural. Like it wasn't just I could code it, but it became natural. And then like the compiler's my friend. All the compilers do is helping me write better, stronger, faster code. Just makes everything better. It's not hitting me and yelling at me and telling me my homework's done bad. It's just helping me. It's training me. So at that point, it was like suddenly, there's like no turning back. Like it's like the most amazing language because it just like keeps you doing the right thing. It tells you what you should be doing. It helps you. So yeah, I don't know. And it's like at the end, it's super, super compact and concise and efficient. So yeah.
So I've got, since we're heading back in the direction of CosmWasm now by the sound of things, so we're talking about Rust. I've got a practical point. So Ethan, you obviously have done a lot more thinking about this certainly than I have. I'm kind of curious. I've wondered this quite a bit. Like, what is it that drives? Because obviously, look at Aptos, Polkadot, obviously Ethereum itself, obviously CosmWasm. All of these are using WASM as their target, right, for the VM. What is it about WASM as a target and like as a runtime that makes it so prevalent? Is it just the availability of it? Is it just the ergonomics of it? Because again, I guess like naively, you take a step back into sort of I guess programming language theory and start to think about ASTs and all that sort of stuff, and you go like, oh right, is this the best way of doing things rather than, because that's Jaquan's big thing with no-lang, right? Is being able to actually represent the code in a non-obfuscated binary, as I understand it, right? So there are some people who are kind of whatever you may think of the no-lang project, the no-lang, whatever the
GNOME.
Yeah.
Gnomes,
Yeah,
gnomes, yeah.
the gnomes lang. There are, but what I mean is like it's so much more common to see smart contracts and that sort of stuff with WASM as the target. Like for somebody who's not written CosmWasm, why is it that WASM is always the kind of target for these smart contracts?
Well, I mean, there's two ways of doing it. There's basically you have the choice of doing a VM, where you compile any language to the VM representation. VM is basically a virtual CPU, a virtual machine, right? So it's some target you can compile something down to. And like EVM or the JVM, your favorite one over there. And the other approach is interpreting it. So what GNOME does interprets it. It's actually pretty interesting. I looked at the project. There's some really cool ideas he has about like how map storage and actually storing whole pointer sequences and auto-merkleizing memory. It's doing some stuff kind of like the active records from Ruby and stuff like that because it's all interpreted language. Which could do more powerful stuff, but for me, you're kind of embedding the whole interpreter runtime and your programming language into one blob. It's kind of complex, and then you have to write the whole thing, maintain the whole thing, right? Tezos did that one as well. They have a language you compile, you can run the Tezos language, right? I don't think they have VM for it, just have a language interpreter, I think. A lot of these ones write their languages, Golang and stuff like that was coming out. All these other ones invented their own language and an interpreter for it. This was like the first thing they ever did. Except for Ethereum was the one that made a VM. And when Ethereum came out, they looked at basically, we want a solid virtual machine to run on, right? And they looked at, they have all their hashing things, they want to do their hashing stuff and their rules. At the time, if you wanted to use a drop-in VM to use, it was a JVM. If you look at that, it comes to this huge history. Not just like, but like it's a whole runtime. Like the judgment virtual machine is tied to Java language or like, well, derivatives Kotlin is nicer actually, or, Clojure or something, but like it's also tied to entire system calls and everything like that. You can't just embed it somewhere else. The EVM said, hey, we have to build our own virtual machine. And around that time, this WASM started coming out of Mozilla and stuff like that, and WebAssembly. And it came into a virtual machine. The virtual machine is super simple. Rather than make it more complex, we'll take the opposite approach of JVM, which was like, let's make a simple one. is just a simple CPU, an old school CPU and memory, nothing else. You can't read files. You can't do the network. You can't print to a screen. You can't have a GPU. You can't do anything really, right? So you can't even sleep 5 seconds. You can't launch a process. You can't do anything. All you can do is take the input and run a function and come out. And the inputs can only be integers, right? You can't even take strings in. Take integers and you map everything else. So it's really, really simple. And what that meant is you could add, but then you could add customizations to it. So you could customize it, right? So it's basically a super simple thing, train down and customize to. And so anything you want to do with it, you can extend it to add your custom blockchain stuff to it. CosmWasm is extension points. Here, entry points, here, custom calls to send messages, to query people, right? To check my values. But everything else is done for you. So if you think about it, a lot of different teams work to make really efficient WASM virtual machines. Not just the browsers, but also WASM Time and Wasmer and a bunch and GoWagon and a bunch of other ones, implementations of this very simple spec to have faster and faster ones. You have a series of competition to build the best possible virtual machine, the fastest one, most secure one, right? And then you have many different languages that exist and are really supported mainstream languages that compile down to this virtual machine. So C and C++, the first ones. Rust came up very shortly as amazing support. There's also some support for other things, like I know Go is working, TinyGo works a bit on that one. There are a bunch of esoteric languages also going to this thing like VLang compiles down to it, and NIM, I think. So there's a few, you have a choice. Basically, you can take a handful of existing full-fledged languages that other people build. You don't build your own language like a Solidity. You have another existing ecosystem language. You have a virtual machine that a lot of different teams are maintaining versions of, make them faster and faster, right? And then you just function on how do you plug this virtual machine into a blockchain. That saves all that fucking work for you. Don't build a language, the tooling around a language, an IDE plug into a language, try to write your own virtual machine specification, optimize virtual machine specification, work on edge cases on it, run JIT compilers, just-in-time compilers, et cetera, And like at this point, Wasm's fast. You don't even worry about not like Solidity like trying to figure out how to deal with the gas costs. It's because like it just runs so fast because you have like the speed of Rust and the speed of highly optimized JIT compiler on the virtual machine. So basically, you just get it for free. So everyone says, "Hey, we got all this amazing superpower for free. Let's just plug into a blockchain and worry about like the APIs we expose on this system, rather than building this hard system." You know, we're not computer science students, not grad students.
Because I guess even if you had, from a PLT perspective, like another, if everybody, okay, so basically, like if everybody wasn't so allergic to parentheses, the obvious solution would be a Lisp, because every single Lisp is self-embedded, right? We've all seen SICP where he comes up with the fez on his head and says, I'm going to show you where the magic happens, like the kind of metacircular compiler nature of all kind of Lisp programs, where the AST, blah, 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 homoiconicity and stuff. But the thing with that is that even if you did that, it's not going to be an optimized runtime, is it? Right. Whereas WASM, like you say, the performance has been squeezed out at this point. Like it's used by a lot of people for performant programs, and there's additional optimizations you can do in the language that you're, on its way down to that compile target, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Lisp. I think everyone learns a Lisp. I learned that in school and then kind of ran. It killed functional programming for me. It took about 10 years, 15 years to write functional programming after that.
I think when you said earlier, you were like, people either love or hate Rust. I was like, no, people love or hate Lisp. That's the one. Anybody can learn Rust. You just bash your head against it a little bit and the types will make sense. It's not Haskell. It's not that bad. But Lisp is one of those that you either experience it and you're like, this is what I've been missing in programming, or you're like, I fucking hate it. And yeah, I don't know. It's an addictive drug if you're into it.
Haskell, I tried Haskell and it made sense as long as doing math. As soon as I said, okay, I want to read input for the user. I want to write data to the database. I want to talk to the network. Oh, that's complex esoteric stuff. You can't do that. Just do math. Yeah. Like, no input, just output. Just like you're very programmed as math for you. It's great.
But at the same time, as soon as you get past the people shit posting what is a monad? It's just a monoid in the category of end-effectors. What's the problem? kind of shit posting and all of that. And you go, and the burrito thing as well, which is the single most unhelpful thing that another programmer has ever said to me. Oh, what's the problem? It's just like a burrito. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, mate. That's not going to fucking help me implement this thing this week. But the idea that you have composable boxes of logic that are mathematically provable, I don't have to have a maths degree to believe that the monad proof holds, right? So that is really powerful. But like you say, should I have to worry about that to do IO? Probably not. But then the flip side of that is in Rust, you do have to use a monad to do IO, right? You using a result type or a wrapped result type, but nobody knows it's a monad because that's not how Rust puts it to you. So it's like, it's that ergonomic, that extra bit they've thought about the language. They've gone like, should we just give everybody a result type and not freak people out? Or shall we tell them it's a monad? It's like, no, just give them an option and result and let's just move on with our lives. And let's give them an NPM style build system that's nice and modern and not shit like the Haskell build system. Yeah, like the first time I ever used a Haskell compiler and it was like, this isn't going to compile, mate, but I think the code you meant to write was this. I can just like fix that for you. Because this is long before GitHub Copilot. I was like, holy shit. And then when I saw that with Rust and Rust and Clippy and that sort of stuff, I was like, yes, this is great. This is sick. I'm an idiot. I quite like the computer telling me you're wrong. Here's why you're wrong. I've done some working out. I think here's the solution.
It's wonderful. The when computer says you're wrong, but no, the message that sucks. Error. Like when it says you're wrong, this is why you're wrong, and here's what you should do, and here's a link to an article explains it if you understand it more. Like I'm like, wow, thank you, master. I'm a student,
exactly.
Computer. Teach me, student.
So before you sort of got into crypto, Ethan, what were you? I think I remember the answer to this, but what kind of software were you working on building? So like, what's your kind of background in work in that? Is it kind of low level stuff like drivers and stuff, or is it something else?
Yeah, there's web stuff, a bunch of products. So I mean, and all kinds of stuff through the knots. I'd say a bunch of random jobs. I worked at Ableton Live. I don't know if you ever worked with that DJ stuff, CF stuff.
I fucking love Ableton. Oh my god, it was
like the only decent tech job I could find in Berlin at the time. It was an awesome place.
Do you know what? Actually, the other thing that I got the time where I wrote in my notebook, all Jake would do is talk about Cosmos. The other thing that I got him to do that time I saw him was download a copy of Ableton Live because he was complaining. He was complaining about the ergonomics of Logic, I think, and was doing some demos for some stuff. And I was just like, just fucking download Ableton, dude. Just download Ableton. It will change your life. And
it's a fucking starter drug to buy all kinds of MIDI controllers. Like that's really what it is. I needed a keyboard. No, I needed a pad, a drum pad. I have little like the boxes. There's so many different boxes there. They kept giving us like samples of stuff there. Oh my god, it was cool. It was cool. Cool place. Yeah.
Okay, so it's music related. Gotcha. Had to do
I was working at Ableton, but then I was also ended up doing other more like backend. It's backend for web stuff. There's a whole bunch of backend web stuff after that. The biggest Orderbird, basically an iPhone app that ordered for restaurants, ordering stuff, whatever. But we had big databases, thousands of restaurant data in there and stuff like that, and API services. It's all the backend APIs in it. And then it was really scaling. It was actually funny before I got into blockchain. I was like trying to figure out how to handle conflicts between like multiple people editing the same data at the same time, and you wanted to not lock it without locking. So I got into those weird concepts of that, like CRDTs before the blockchain. So it's like nerding out on like message queues and CRDTs and
CRDTs. Fucking love CRDTs. Fucking love CRDTs.
Like, but how do you allow two people to edit the same thing at the same time without crashing and breaking it? So like, yeah. Anyway, it was an interesting thing. And I was kind of in that rabbit hole anyway of like trying to figure out how to make scalable backend systems in this case before I got in there. So like, I remember looking somehow at Raft consensus algorithm for some other reason. I have no idea why before I even knew about Tendermint. And when I found Tendermint, I'm like, okay, this is like, this is a much more advanced version. But like, yeah. So I was kind of I got somehow into that weird loophole of backend engineer getting too much into their theory.
Yeah, I guess that makes. Well, I mean, were you guys running like Kafka or Cassandra or things like that to manage all that data? Because I think that's quite a common way into distributed systems for backend engineers, is having to fuck around with Zookeeper to keep the Kafka clusters organized. That's certainly what it was for me. Like, Schultzy's nodding. I feel like that might be the same.
Oh yeah, I worked with that very heavily when I was at Acorns.
Yeah, this is 10 years ago. We didn't actually use Kafka. I was kind of like trying to get more stuff in there and use, I was even looking at various systems back there. We were stuck on a giant Mongo clustered Postgres Mongo clusters and RabbitMQ messaging.
Mongo, that dates it. Mongo's web scale, right?
Dude, I just sharded the hell out of that thing. Like, there's some limit that like we only support sharding up to like 400 gigabytes or 500 gigabytes. Beyond that limit, we're not sure it's possible to shard it. And they kept pushing it back, and the data kept growing. And we're like, dude, we're like 450 gigabytes. We got to shard now. Or like, they're not going to let us shard ever again. So anyway, that was an interesting one. So yeah, I would say lots of tech debt in that company.
Yeah, I think everybody has a story where they're like, you should never do this, but equally, that's what I went to work and was paid to do, and I'm not proud of it. But we got to the end of the day. I think the worst thing I can remember doing was we had this massive Spark cluster, but it was paid for. Like, Microsoft were trying to get us to use a managed Spark service, and we had unlimited disk space, but quite bound CPU space. You can see where this is going, can't you?
Yeah.
It turned out that because it was backed by like Azure Blob or whatever, you could just make a massive fake swap disk over like all of the Azure storage that we had in our account, which was fucking lots. And then just basically just run all the different things and just have them dip into the swap. And when they ran out of space, when they ran out of RAM or compute, and that's how we managed to get a multiple of what we were supposed to be using on the slightly above free tier job done, like a multi kind of terabyte join basically across some databases. And they were just like, oh, we're seeing a lot of usage from your disks today. You're shuffling around lots of data. And you were like, yep.
Well, I got a little note before we started this chat. I'm happy to hear geeking out, but I got some note that we should not talk about dev stuff. We should talk about drama per second and some other top points you're supposed to talk about, I think there.
Well, I did actually want to talk about some more WASM stuff. So, look, I've got a burning question for myself, right? And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask it. It's always been on my mind a potential problem about blockchain performance with validator hardware. Is that like something that as WASM becomes more and more used, actually processing all of that contract usage inside VMs in between the blocks, like how does that relationship work? And like, as there's more load on the blockchain, how does that affect validator performance and like min hardware specs and that type of stuff? So are we going to get like dragged down by the lowest common denominator on the blockchain, or is it not really of concern? It just won't get there and miss blocks, or how's it work?
I mean, the only way is dragged down. If like 70% of the people are fast enough, the other low ones miss blocks, they get screwed. So like, you kind of get dragged down the masses, but like five bad validators of crappy hardware just get kicked off basically, because they'll be jailed because they can't run the blocks anymore. Happened to us most, I think, too. Sometimes in RHINO. Like if you're running on 4 gigs of RAM, you'll run fine for a while and then you just crash. Some transaction comes in, you just can't handle it. So the crappy ones just fall off basically, and all the mid-level, basically you settle around the mid-level, right? So as long as 70, the bottom 20% can drop off, but if you're down to like, the bottom 30%, maybe 40%, it's like that 30 percentile is what keeps it locked down to that one. And I looked at this, I timed this stuff, we did a lot of work in performance. And so WASM is not that much slower than native code running, like CPU time, talking about. Uses a lot more memory, actually. But not much for CPU time, but it is slow storage and all the read writes of storage from disk. And so I looked at stuff, and basically that's just, if you want to go fast on the blockchain, just speed the storage. Just. That's not just, but like, yeah, if you speed up storage access, you have good disks, you want good SSDs, but like speed up storage, reading and writing out will go faster. A lot faster.
And that's IAVL, right? Because that's also
course.
got its own performance
I wanted
questions
to
around it,
refactor
doesn't
that
it?
in 2017. As February 2017, I was trying to refactor that and realized how slow it was. I said we should rewrite this thing. Not rewrite it. It wasn't bad code. It was just like you can clean it up and like optimize and all these things. And I got pulled off that project. So now it's actually priority. It's fine. It was too early then. All these things I wanted to do back in 2017 are still too early, and they're actually probably due 2019. And they're kind of getting around to doing them these days. They're trying to build a new one, SMT. I don't know who will do it. It's mostly trying to tune up IVL. There are alternatives out there. I don't really know what's going on. No one's really working on it that much, I think. So
I guess it is pretty. It's off the end of quite hard and into very hard. Some of that stuff.
yeah, you have to really low level people. I mean,
Yeah.
and so they're all doing other stuff. So the problem here is basically we have infrastructure for this product, and like, well, everyone's sitting around there, like, and Adam was like, nothing's really going on until IBC came on. It's like there's all this money in infrastructure, and a lot of people, oh, we have money. We're going to go slow pace, no rush. And then the money comes in, and like last year, it's like, okay, money, build. Now it's time for infrastructure. Every dev that's skilled is building, right? Everything that has the skills is building product. And there's no time for infrastructure. Now everything, the infrastructure you should build last 2 years, we need it now. So no one's building infrastructure, and we can apparent the limits of the infrastructure we have, right? Because it was actually more urgent than thought. So it's a weird situation. Now we're in the bear market, so hopefully some of these devs build the infrastructure we need and get ready. So 6 months, a year from now, we'll actually have the infrastructure we need.
So that's a little bit on to dev onboarding and that sort of stuff as well, which we've got another question on here, which I'm going to segue into, which is
Hang on.
Sorry, no.
I'm still not done.
Okay.
Validator onboarding in a minute. So related to the performance, Ethan, I was wondering, so this in certain environments now, for certain applications, like there's a bit of a race for faster blocks. So, we're getting down to like the half-second block range in some networks. For networks that use CosmWasm, how will that affect the speeding up block speeds? So there's like more blocks per minute. Is there going to be a point where there's just not enough time to process contracts in between actually minting blocks? And if so, does that just mean that all of the CosmWasm transactions just don't make it into blocks? So
it just slows down. You have to make a block. So you have to make a block, and then you have to run the block. And then you can't make another block till you run that block. And Tendermint works that way. Tendermint works that needs to finish. If you make a block X, then everyone has to run that one. And the result of running it is actually part of making block X plus 1. Right?
Okay, so you have to finish the CosmWasm.
You have to finish running it before you can start the next block.
Right.
I've tuned down. I played around local nodes. You tune it down, and I'm running 1/4 second blocks on local node. One node. It's running contracts. They're running. I tuned the consensus down to like I think 200 millisecond pauses, and it's running every 250, 300 milliseconds. It's popping a block out there with contracts, IBC transactions, and runs. I think at some level you have a bunch of small blocks. It's fine, rather than one big block, right? So the execution time is not any different. The main time is actually running those blocks is a lot of P2P stuff.
I think that what Niall's getting at is that's by turning down the IOTA, not the IOTA.
All those things, configurations.
It's by tuning
commit timeouts and
right.
Timeouts,
It's by tuning that configuration to bring the block time down. But I think a lot of chains are bringing the timeout time down on a per validator basis to speed up the blocks. And I think what Niall's getting at is that if you are bringing down block time using the timeout, then isn't there a chance that you'll end up with higher gas or slower execution, like larger things that potentially just not going to make it in a block as regularly, if you see what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's a bad decision there, honestly. I think there's just one, and there are a bunch of designs, honestly. Like, I think the proper design, and I was pushing this. I built this back in 2018. It's my other SDK. So I built I built the Cosmos SDK, by the way, in 2017, like 0.6.0a. If you look at making Cosmos SDK, one of the big contributors, but it's really like that summer of 2017. And they took off. They built on it. And then I got went off of my own SDK, which I thought was better, and that had things like protobuf types back in 2018, and a JavaScript client that could actually sign messages without using some other Go medium stuff, and multi-sig kind of DAO, basically the beginning of DAO was kind of in there, at least group contracts, ORMs, all these features in there was nice. One thing we did in there is called Weave, and one thing we did in there was also work on this no empty blocks, which is a really cool thing, which is adaptive block timing. So you can tune your system so it will have a minimum block time of half a second. But if no transactions come in, it skips it. So
blocks are lazy, basically.
It tries to make, you tuned it. It should work like every second, or let's say every 1 second, you try to make a block. But if there's no changes in that block, then just skip it and wait. And then say, well, at least every 5 minutes you make a block, right? So at least one every 5 minutes comes out there. But if there are transactions, you'll make every second comes a block. And there's a pause and maybe 7 seconds, and then another few seconds, a few blocks come out, and then a pause. So it can be adaptive.
I was talking to someone about this the other day, that same concept of like variable block times. And the issue I had in my head is actually for inflationary chains is the minting, because you would have to then vary it, like it'd be really
this isn't really POS. Basically they built Tendermint a while ago, and then tired SDK development has killed this whole idea. First of all, the way they store things, they always write something every block. So there's no empty blocks ever. Effectively, they change state every block. So you need blocks that don't change state to make it work, because they write stuff every block. So POS stores lots of writes every block. The second thing is, so you need Epic payments. If you have Epic rewards being dumped, then you could do it. The other point is they measure everything a number of blocks, not in time. That's historical, because back in the day, like in 2019, there's no guarantees 18 on Tendermint that your block time is actually real trustable, and you can play with it. So they got that in there like in 2019 or 2020 that the block time is guaranteed, basically Byzantine fault tolerant block times. So at this point, honestly, there's no reason to give out a reward per height, per block. We should do it per hour or per day or something. If you look at T-Grade, they do that. We just do it per time. We do it per time, not per block.
So
but there are like a lot of complexities in using time-based things in blockchain though, right?
You can't use a real time, but the block time. So block time is trustable, just like height is trustable. There's always going up. There's a lot of rules on what block time can do. So you can't use the current time. What time is it now? Because my computer, your computer are different, and not just different time zones, but they actually, might have off by a few seconds or milliseconds. But someone might run that same blockchain 5 years later, and the time then is 5 years different than it is now. But at the time the block was minted, when you create a block, you put a time on that block, which must increase every time, and 2/3 of the validators must agree that's a valid time within like a few seconds. So you can shift it a little bit. If you're playing per second, you can play with it a little bit. Validators can shift things around and play a few seconds. But you can't really push it much. You can't shift it for an hour ahead, something like that. It doesn't matter what you try. Unless you can fork the chain, basically. Unless you have to fork the chain, you can't do that.
Yeah, so minting would have to completely change for it to work. Otherwise, people would just if you kept going per block for your emission, and you wanted to say, like you were saying, if there's no transactions, then only do a block every 5 minutes or something, then people would just game it and smash it with bullshit transactions just to keep the blocks coming. So they keep getting their rewards coming. So,
of course. But it's all doable. I'm not saying all of this is doable, right? So, it's been done. The technology's there. It's the design of the POS system, and so I'll just shill a few things here right now. So I think the POS system was an interesting thing. It was done in a hack, and if you hear about the whole collapse of AIB, end of 2019, beginning of 2020, or did you miss that drama? For a second. So they basically say it was a chaos, death march, polarization, and so stuff was going on. Basically, there's a bunch of people hacking away, and they got something working. And POS in Cosmos is stable. The implementation is stable, not the design. I think the design is actually quite nice. the implementation is stable. I think largely because it's been tested so heavily and it's been like fuzzed in production, so it's stable. But I don't think it is the best implementation possible, and it's so hard to change. It's like I've looked at code. It's like it's scary because you can't really understand it well enough to change it, but it works. So the liquid staking module has taken them like a year and a half, a lot of really top devs to build it. They can't touch this module, right? So I think it's time to actually have a different module. So like T-Grid, I put it out, we should build our own module of our own staking module, own distribution module, own governance modules, using actually CosmWasm contracts for everything. This is all built in CosmWasm contracts,
So
which is pretty powerful.
Ethan, we had a question actually, so I'll just pick you up on there from Rama, who said, when will we get a WASM SDK or WASM smart contracts as modules? So I was going to say to Rama, let's get Ethan to talk about T-Grade. So now you're talking about it. Can you explain a little bit about how that works for those that maybe haven't been following T-Grade or TWASM?
Cool. Yeah, T-Grade basically has, happy to talk about product here. So T-Grade is basically we add hooks so modules can call in to privileged things. You have privileged modules and you click in begin block, end block, control validators, adjust consensus parameters. These various things that modules can do that contracts can't do. You can promote contracts to be privileged, or right, to become system modules. So after that point, you have to set up Go code to set these modules up, line them up there. Then you have a validator module, which just sets a validator set every block, and or not. You have a staking module, and it can begin block things, so it can automatically pay you back rather than having to claim it. It just checks every begin block who's out to pay out and pay out people their rewards. And so they can hug into begin block, end block. You have governance voting modules, so the validators can vote and actually set up an X upgrade call. It's called an X upgrade to set the chain upgrade. They can change 10% parameters. So you can do all of it. We just wrote that as extra bindings, custom message bindings, basically, and it works the rest of the way inside of we have our own custom message bindings. Otherwise, normal CosmWasm contracts. So I think it's really powerful. And one thing I also mentioned out, there's a bug right now, actually, that turned out that someone tried to withdraw, I guess, 0. And we didn't check the 0. And then they tried to send a 0 claim in the begin block. And that caused some sort of, error, which we just caught a bank. So that blocked everything else. But now no one can claim. I think it's still out live now. It happened a few days ago. But the same day, within finding it, that was yesterday actually, within like an hour, we identified it. Within another 2 hours, someone had written a new code to do it, to fix it on a contract. And you recompile a new contract. And now what you do, you upload the contract, and you just have to do a vote. So at that point, you don't have to start the blockchain or anything. You can write the contract, upload a contract, and then the validators can just have a normal vote, like a DAO vote, right? To swap the modules. Hey, do a migration from the old one to the new one. So you don't actually have to restart the chain for almost anything. You can adjust the core levels of consensus just by doing a contract migration. I mean, quote unquote, just because you actually need to have the validator set has to vote on it in a gov contract for it, right? So it's a very important vote. But yeah, you can do that stuff if you have that right privileges. And that's all then, I think, and the governance, we've seen DAO governance versus native governance, I think is pretty powerful. So I'd love to actually put some more DAO stuff there. We have our own, it's not DAO, we have our own kind of similar DAO ecosystem there. That is really cool.
That's pretty killer, actually. That particular thing. The fact that you can upgrade modules without having to, have an upgrade with everybody, and everybody has to do the upgrade, is like just through swapping out contracts that's pretty killer, I have to say.
Because that's twice.
That's where 90% of the fuck ups happen is like during upgrades, right? Like case in point, the other day, old mate has double signed during a fucked up upgrade. Oh, actually, no, it was just, sorry, that's wrong. It was just during business as usual, right? And there was a problem which resulted in a halt, which needed to get restarted. But they did have to upgrade the binaries, which then resulted in some database issues, which then resulted in the loss of state, I'm assuming, from the signing state, which resulted in a double sign. So once again, a non-malicious double sign, but a double sign all the same. So I think they've had an upgrade. This is a secret, by the way. They've had an upgrade to they're voting on an upgrade now to restore the validator and the slash. But just interesting that type of system can then be in place to just, for most upgrades, just walk right past all that stuff, and then, you know, you vote on it, and it's done.
So I'm aware that we've got about 5 minutes left with our allotted hour with Ethan. So as a kind of pushing things along as a kind of towards a wrap up, maybe.
So before we push things along to the wrap up, the Frey, can you, just so everybody knows in the audience, can you actually tell them the format?
Well, okay. Yes, it somewhat takes that. So we're experimenting with a new format where we're going to keep it to an hour with our guests. We're not doing any news or anything like that at the top of the show, and we're going to have less structured stuff after we've talked to guests, because we need to be more polite with our guest time and stay on topic, which is hopefully what me and Null have been doing with the questions we've had during this talk, and by only interrupting each other and not our guests.
But we might want to just give maybe an extra 5 minutes for Ethan to actually talk about WYND, because it's pretty important for him. So
that is also true. But so on just on the Cosmos more generally, Ethan, like well, and I suppose mainly CosmWasm really in this context. You know, what do you think the biggest challenges like facing the Cosmos are? So like going forward, like where do you see the ecosystem going, and what is CosmWasm's role within that?
So I think CosmWasm are coming together more and more, right? Like it was a few chains, and now like I think most of the major chains now have CosmWasm, a variety of it. The Hub and Evos don't, but I think if you look at the next 5 or 6 different important chains, I mean, you look at Osmosis, Juno, Injective, Secret, they're all in it. Persistence rolls out. I don't know, I keep seeing more people rolling out CosmWasm on there. So I think there are non-CosmWasm chains out there, but I think a large number of the important chains are CosmWasm. So like, it's a subset, but I think it's an important subset, right? And they're both moving together. So I see CosmWasm innovation. A lot of ways you see a lot of innovation happening there, especially IBC layer, faster than other chains, other non-CosmWasm chains. But I think a lot of the non-CosmWasm chains can really go for stability things that are well-defined problems, right? If you know a problem is well-defined, it'll be the same problem in a year. It's a great thing for Go modules. If it's changing every 3 months, it's a better thing for CosmWasm. Just move faster. So I think that's a big difference. But where I see is going in IBC. Like IBC has proven that 1 year of like token transfers and the whole tokens and connecting bridges, and IBC bridges holding up while the ETH bridges keep falling over, like I think is proven Cosmos idea. But IBC it's a baby, dude. Interchain accounts is trying to come out there. Interchain security, interchain queries. Those are the beginning generic protocols. We have hundreds of protocols that go off and riff on those, on other, you know, if you want to talk to me on this, but we need a whole podcast just on this one. But like, I think IBC, the future is IBC and multi-chain, and going beyond what everything is porting from Ethereum. Like I'll play the same app in 3 chains, but actually having like parts of have one application architected uses parts of different chains, right? Like maybe it has part of its, you know, it's handling like a liquidity pool that's like on Osmosis, which is using the like auto liquidating on the DEX, right? And you have another piece. It's like liquidity staking derivatives launched on Juno. Another piece is like secret voting launched on Secret Network, right? And you kind of architect this way, and you can build something like that. And say, okay, now let's connect these pieces together, and actually don't just have people manage them, but this app on one chain, the app-led chain, or talk to each other in a special way. So I think actually architect this out is very like the next step. And along with that, that's just technically, but I think really what needs to happen in Cosmos is users. The devs are there. A lot of devs are here, but like I think it's the unification. I start to IBC because IBC means people coming together. It means not like silo 1, silo 2, and silo 3 fighting, but like silo 1, silo 2, silo 3 coming together in one larger group. It means sharing users, sharing devs, sharing mindshare, right? And that's how, like, you know, no zone is going to compete with Ethereum, but 40 zones working together, collaborating. You know, it's like the fucking Voltron, right? So I think that's where the future of this is. So, you know, getting more users and really collaborating and breaking these like different silo chains, not just move my money into my chain on your chain, but like really collaborate and have these applications that are really truly cross chain. And with that, pull in a huge new group of users.
It makes sense. Something I think I've obviously talked on the podcast about before, but also I think I think I've talked to you about, Ethan, as well, is that I'm personally pretty excited about Penumbra. And I think like not only because of their model, not only because of all the stuff they're doing with ZK and everything, but also because they're an IBC zone that's not using the SDK. So it's like, it's beginning to fulfill the app chain thesis outside of people building with a monolithic stack, which I think is really interesting as well. Like, again, for bringing in other cohorts of users from radically different use cases.
Totally. I think it's a really cool product they're building. I'd love to see it actually. They push things in different ways. It's awesome to see that. Them push things and force the stack to actually become multi-chain. Like not just multiple Cosmos decays, but like really multi-chain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously I'd love to see, I don't think I would love to see a Rust SDK, but I would like to see libraries available for, because there's obviously the IBC Rust library. It would be great to, I've already bugged Ethan about this, like what would need to happen to have an IBC, a CosmWasm Rust. Fine, I'd love to see that. But Ethan, WYND DAO, would you like to just talk about WYND DAO for a little bit before Null or Usurper rugs you off of the show?
I'd love to. Before I get pulled off the stage, I love to riff on WYND DAO. So WYND DAO is maybe why I'm not building a Rust SDK. It's like I've built infrastructure for 5.5 years, and I want to build something that felt meaningful, like a product that felt meaningful. So I was watching DeFi, I was studying all the DeFi stuff, didn't jump in the fray back in the bull market, didn't want to launch something. And WYND for me is really something close to my heart. It's like I'm trying to build a meaningful product that actually fits the markets. And it falls into this like multi-chain application thesis I was telling you about, like actually connecting all the chains and building something that's like bigger than some of the parts, that kind of feeling, and technical, and also trying to bring community together cross-chain. So WYND DAO, first of all, WYND DAO is, right now we have a token on Juno, and the DAO is coming live very soon. It's like a very customized DAO application. It's coming live, just to know what it is. And that DAO, which if you were Juno or Osmo staker, you hopefully got your airdrop, because in regen stakers, we airdropped a whole bunch of tokens. There's another round coming soon. But it's coming out. Basically, it's on there. We are now launching protocols, DeFi protocols cross-chain on multiple chains. The idea. And all controlled by one governance token. Not like everyone makes their own governance token or legal structure. Just have one thing, come into this, join the WYND DAO, and we launch lots of DeFi protocols. So one coming soon is staking derivatives on Juno. This should be here within 2 months. So we want to have the native and not have to like send your tokens to another chain, just native on Juno. We can replicate other ones. There's some nice bonuses on this thing, but whatever. Another staking derivative. We want to add other things like stable coins, lending protocols, et cetera, Oracle services. We're working on all of these pieces in design stage. The idea is to run out a whole bunch of ones on different chains and then figure out how to like connect them cross chain to build a DeFi ecosystem and collaborate with other projects. And once you get other projects out there, once you have one DAO, it's really the DAO, about the DAO, not about your protocol. You can have a DAO, another DAO merge, swap. What does it mean to have protocols collecting not just moving tokens, but actually interacting in deeper ways? So I really want to experiment with that. Like experiment with having one DAO control projects on multiple chains directly, and see it bring a huge revenue into that, and also figure out how you can merge DAOs, how you can do token swaps between DAOs, and joint partnerships between DAOs. Because a DAO,
that's also DAO's model, isn't it? Being on multiple chains, doing token swaps when necessary, that sort of stuff. So again, like you say, these applications that are coming along that don't have just one home chain.
I'm super stuck in DAO. Like DAO is kind of like things I wish had time to build, and then I found you guys are building this stuff. Like this is awesome. It's like the very same philosophy I've had about governance. And like you guys are building this stuff. Is awesome. Thank you. I built CW3 and CW4 back in like late 2020, hoping someone would take it. Like a year later, I found like this DAO UI. I'm like, oh my god, they're actually doing it. So that's super awesome. So yeah, Pupmos, WYND not related to trees. WYND is also trees. So beyond building this technical DeFi protocol, what we're doing is, so I didn't want to build like the cool IBC DeFi stuff. I want to do something with DeFi. Like I came in to put out money. I want to build something better money, more meaningful money that represents values, rather than just money to buy something. So what I was trying to do that lots of ways. What we're doing in WYND is taking 25% of all revenue from the protocol and donating it to environment. There'll be a special and that will be like a committee appointed to pick projects and dedicate it to things. And whether it's clean ocean plastics or planting trees or investing in future tech, trying to green deserts, and do crazy, moonshot environmental stuff. Everything for environmental good, basically, is all, everything for there is all going to be funded by this. So whatever the DAO wants to vote on is open. So at the same time, it'll be extending DeFi protocols on multiple chains. It's pushing CosmWasm IBC to the limits. And, being a big DAO is based on DAO. It's also take the profits of that, a lot of that, so you can basically help the planet and make money at the same time.
Okay.
Wow.
I don't know who did the rugging there, but that was very efficient. For those of you listening at home, that was Ethan, father of CosmWasm, Ethan Frey, the other Frey, the OG Frey. Hopefully that was an interesting talk. I think I learned a lot. My head hurts a little bit. Maybe we should invite Ethan back.
Ask some more questions.
Well, I feel
right
like
now?
we got like 3 questions. We had like 6 questions on the list, just as like, here's some obvious questions to ask, and we got like halfway down them. So
Right.
And yeah, I even got to get out. I even had an opportunity to get out a guitar at one point. So if that's not a good conversation, I don't know what is. Again, if you're listening back on a podcast player, you might have missed that bit.
Mm-hmm.
There were guitars earlier. So yeah. What would you want to cover off first? Do you want to do follow-ups?
So let's kick off with our follow-up questions, housekeeping, and that usually just leads into the bullshit anyway, right?
Sure.
True enough.
You got to talk about your. You have to talk about your Kingnodes Twitter.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Whatchamacallit.
So Ethan was kind of like referring to this a little bit earlier. So we put on a poll, which about 7 or 8 people answered. No, it had some decent amount of answering. So Ethan was talking about people want to see the DPS. So he was trying to segue into some DPS, but Ethan, that's not the main show, mate. The DPS is after. Probably, I mean, you might want to come back for the DPS, but the problem is he's still here. But the problem is if I bring him up, you fuckers are just going to ask him about dev shit. So I don't know.
The format's the format. No, stop complaining. Stop showing how the sausage is made. You just.
Oh my goodness.
So anyway,
professionalism.
we did a poll on the Twitter, and for fuck's sake, like, just follow us if you don't, because we're like
on
6
Twitter.
months into this thing, and although we don't market, we shouldn't have to. All right, it's a fucking awesome show. And we only just cracked 1,000 followers. I put out a tweet that we're almost at 1,000 followers. And someone left. We were at 998. And then someone rolled back to 997. Fuck you. So
maybe that was me. Was that me?
Or Australian cult movies.
Maybe that was me.
I was the other day. I was like looking for some more people to follow, right? Because I like to follow people in the eco. But the problem is that I don't want the following to change from 69. So every time I go and follow someone, I have to go through the list and unfollow someone. So if you've been unfollowed from Game of Nodes lately, you didn't miss the cut. Maybe we should just bang it up to 420 or something like that. Keep with a cult number. And
are there 420 interesting people in the eco?
Jeez,
mate, just start clicking follow, Anyway, back to the poll. So we did a poll, and we were I was just probing for what what people appreciate in the show. But now I think the poll's just more of a meme, because I don't think we actually got the answer that is the real answer, because we've had more people watching today than what we ever have had previously, right? So on the live show. So obviously people want to see devs, but in our bloody poll, the options were DPS/shit talk, validator talk, my ignorance of movies, and dev guests. And they were voted pretty much in that order, in a lineal type thing. So, I mean, people appreciate the shit talk above the dev talk, apparently. But I think that's bullshit, because Ethan came on and people showed up for it. So,
well,
it could also be that the Twitter poll made people believe that there'd be more drama than there actually was. So really, it was false advertisement, really.
Well, I mean, That's entirely true. So we've really just rugged people from the poll of going, well, you know, we're going to have more DPS now because that's what you fucking want. But posts.
Well, to be more scientific, your question was, what's your favorite part? So people showing up doesn't mean it's their favorite. We're not good at dev interviews. So like we do okay with it, but we usually get off rails and everything else. So the question was, what's your favorite part? And the favorite part is us doing this, but doesn't necessarily mean that drives more viewers.
So I feel like on the dev side of things, I feel like we don't really invite people in here to interview them about their thing, right? So like if we have,
True,
you know, when we've had people on in the past like Shane and you know other people, right, devs, we haven't really like resolved to be like, all right, we're going to talk about your thing and you know we want to know everything about the thing and shill your thing. It's more like, you know, we just get on and have a chat, and I think that's like better for us because, you know, there's other people that do that to like shill people's projects. I just like to talk to the devs and you know pick their brain about shit that's been floating around for a while.
Well, I think that's the funny part about it is almost every single time we have people on and like you watch them, right? In the first 5 minutes, we're just talking shit. And then 10 minutes rolls by and then 15 minutes and they're like, are we going to get like start hit with questions or what's happening here? And then we're like, oh, we should probably like bring our guests in for conversation. And then we just have a conversation with them rather than like come with questions as they're prepared for. So I think it benefits us to some extent.
yeah. And sometimes we're just trying to figure out what the thing is. Like I thought, like last week with the Skip team, that was really good. We talked a lot about Skip and MEV just because we were also learning, which I thought was cool. And the same thing back when we talked with like the graph protocol and things like that, because there was a bunch of things that haven't happened. But Ethan, like, I mean, like he's the godfather of WASM, right? So that was less about trying to understand it and more just trying to understand who he is, which I think is also not bad. Sorry,
sir.
No, I was gonna say I can't get past this haircut. It's just like bobbing around, and it's like it keeps touching the top up there. It's really sharp. He's not listening.
He's not even listening. I'm just going to defend us here and say I think actually like our interviews have been getting better over time. Like I think particularly with Skip and stuff, it's about like so one of the many things I do for money is I actually interview bands for a living, and I've done it for nearly 15 years. So doxed, but I spent, you know, the first portion of time I was doing that with like, here is my list of questions. The questions are all worked out ahead in advance, you know, no deviation, blah, 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 blah. And you don't get as good answers as when you have some topic areas. If you have like really specific things you want to know, like, you know, with Ethan, for example, like what's your background? That's an interesting thing. Like, is somebody a low level dev that, you know, were they a CS professor or something? You know, like in this space, you really never know, especially with people doing low level work. So, you know, that's a point where you're like, okay, that's a really specific question we want to know about. But then like, you know, the rest of it, you can kind of let it flow to some extent and just sort of guide it around. When somebody gets to an area where they're sort of adjacent to something you might want to talk about, like the contracts thing, you can kind of push them in the direction of saying, oh, it's interesting you said that because I'm interested to hear what you have to say about TWASM, let's say. Yeah. And organically, that's what I found gets better responses on the whole, is having a set of topic areas that you can or can't use. Maybe you don't get to all of them, but if you see like an opportunity to guide the conversation, then it's quite often good to just like push your guest into having a little bit more focus, like just something to kind of in their head to riff off of. I think that's the difficulty when you feel like you're on the spot as somebody talking. I mean, obviously I would always do this anyway because I'm very bad at staying on topic, but I imagine it's also the case that you're having to fill space, and it helps to have like somebody sort of guiding you onto, you know, sort of facilitating the conversation, if you like.
I think that's a fair take. I think more of what I was trying to say was, if you look at other interviews that happen, I think the question of interview or the statement of interview is really the key value we're trying to define here, right? The keyword we're trying to define. And I don't think that our sell is that we're trying to interview. We're trying to facilitate the conversation.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. I mean, but I think that is, pipe up in the comments, but I think like how we joke about how this started was this is just Nald's weekly harassment call made into a podcast. But I think it's also expanded out into like, I think we're naturally kind of quite curious about the space we work in. So why not invite people into the tent, to shoot the shit? Yeah. And because we have, we're as curious as anybody else. And, it should be pretty obvious by now. We don't fucking know anything. So there's also...
that should be a tagline.
Yeah. So some context around that, like our treehouse, right? So back when I started in what we're saying, like February, March last year, right, in 21, like I didn't know much, and I just used to harass people on text and then just call them out of the blue and then have like a 3-hour conversation with, one of the devs of a chain or something. And then I come across this motley crew, and then, I would just call the Frey on a Saturday morning, or my Saturday morning was like his Friday night, and chat for like 2 hours or something while I was getting extra hot coffee for my parents or something like that. And it was just a thing I just used to call people because, I'm not the best typer, and, annoy the shit out of people. And graciously, they would talk to me. I don't know whether they wanted to or not, but had some very long, productive conversations. I learned lots of shit. And so at some point, yeah, like the phrase says, we just decided, well, fuck it. Let's just live stream that and call it some sort of show. And I don't know. It kind of feels, I don't know if like we should add a format to it, but I think it's worth it to try, because whilst, there's the spirit of the show, but then there's also like, I want people to watch it because we talk about some interesting shit, and, whether that's useful to users or other validators, or, even bringing people into the ecosystem just through shit talk. I mean, I think that's kind of important in itself. So I think we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, but I don't, if it gets to a point where it's just this formatted thing and we're like, ticking boxes, I think that might become a bit of bullshit, and we might just have to go back to how we do it. But if it works and we can get some good conversation out of people and before we rug them, then I think that's worth it.
I guess you're getting 2 rugs for the price of 1 per episode as well with the new format, right?
Well, I don't know. Maybe now we'll go, okay, thanks for coming. Please delegate to us, and we'll see you next week.
I'm okay. I don't like that. Rug and guess is a little bit much. I think it's nice. Okay, thanks. And then we could rug each other. That's probably better.
I kind of liked how spicy that was back then. So,
yeah,
mid-sentence.
I think that's kind of cool, because the flip side of this, right, is that we also choose our guests. We don't have people on that don't have a sense of humor as well. So we got Larry next week as well, who maybe doesn't know they're going to get rugged, but I think we'd take it with aplomb, and I think most of our previous guests would as well.
I think
we've already got people in the chat that are very keen about the rugging. If you'd had the rugging on your poll, I think the rugging would have been the number 1 thing.
Yeah, well, that's
my favorite thing about the rugging is when people talk about it on Twitter. Like, it's a very niche group of people that reference it on Twitter, but when then random people see that and they're like, "Oh my god, which project rugged you?" and it causes some people to freak out, and it's like they're talking about a podcast with a bunch of validators. It's totally fine.
It's totally fine.
Yeah, it kind of hurts a little bit to me that we don't get the viewership of other things. I mean,
does it hurt you? I don't. I think
I lay awake at night thinking, just why won't people watch us? Are we that ugly? I got a haircut.
Well,
maybe if we spent 1 second on marketing.
Yeah.
Maybe if we did one thing.
I don't think
I
our
try
content...
to make an obligatory weekly fucking post, though.
Well, but our content isn't related. So I think this is back to, to tie it back to the guest we had on today. Ethan made a very good point about users, right? which is that we need more users in the ecosystem. We need more, we have enough devs. We don't have enough devs. We need more devs, but we also need more users, and we need users, not investors, which is the thing that I've said numerous times, I think, in our private chat. I know Schultze and I were having this conversation like literally last week, where it's like, until the amount you can make from just like buying Atom and sitting on it from 5 years goes down, then you're not going to have users. You're only going to have investors, and that's, I think, the thing. I don't think any of us have any interest in that for the podcast, and that's where the numbers are right now. Yeah.
Ironically, this is the place where users should come for their fucking alpha, because we know more shit than the regular people, right? We know we're involved with all of the upcoming projects. We've got access to all of devs. We just talk to them and ask them questions that isn't public knowledge, and then probably just
but is there any connection between good project and money? There really isn't. Like, it's all animal spirits. I think Putmost mentioned John Maynard Keynes in the chat earlier. So animal spirits. That's all there is.
Well, I think that it's also the time we started is significant, right? Like, we started basically with Prop 16, and there's been a mass exodus of users ever since, right? And
we were here before Prop 16. Fuck me.
No, I know, but that was like episode 4, right? So we kind of started in that time when there was the exodus. And if you look at crypto YouTubers right now, a lot of them have actually just kind of like segued into just general news broadcasts. Like Coin Bureau does a lot of just kind of general news things right now. Whenever he was all about just looking into things or looking into cryptocurrencies and whatever. So I think that it's just kind of a weird time in general. And then, of course, we should probably do some more marketing.
And we could tell more people.
Yeah, fuck news.
Number two on your poll was validator talk, which we've been kind of ignoring a little bit. Like, we should be bitching more about operations and some of these alpha chains we were just talking about, because
I think there's a hugely there is like a hugely, so Usurper and I have been working on. Are we allowed to talk about this, Usurper Schultze?
About what?
I don't think we're allowed to talk about.
We can say what network, and we've been on a test net, right?
That we've been cheating a little bit. Is that what you mean?
No, but we can just say like we've been doing some stuff for our test net on Aptos, right? Yeah. And that has been, I think that has absorbed all of my validator brain for the last 4 weeks. I've been doing actually quite a bit of routine maintenance on our nodes. We've been doing a bunch of stuff in our AWS account. But that has been very interesting, and I think because we only cover the Cosmos, I think maybe haven't been talking about validator stuff, because I think, at least for the three of us, we've been kind of very, very focused on how insanely different that is. Yeah. And trying to get our head around that. And then you kind of come back to Cosmos nodes when you have to do stuff, and you're like, how simple, how excellent. I just have to do all of the things that I know how to do.
How manageable. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, doing the uni stuff this week. Like, so we're Juno V10 coming very soon. Look out for a gov prop on a chain near you, probably in the next 10 days, maybe even sooner. And that's been like really, like, just coming back to that and going like, oh yeah, all the node ops I can literally do blindfolded, has been really, I think that's the difference there, isn't it? Because we talked about Kujira and stuff, where there are now chains that have oracles and whatnot that you have to run. That being a validator is getting more complicated on some chains, but
sure,
for some others, it is still just a case of maintaining high uptime, maintaining a good quality node, rotating things out.
I think there's been a lot more stalls, and that stalls for non-experienced. I mean, honestly, we talked about how long some of us have been. This has been under 2 years, right? So
I've had a lot of stalls lately.
Yeah, and with that happening, and you have a lack of experience, or just people moving too quick, or whatever else. I mean, we've seen the number of tombstones have been gone like crazy. I think that happened like once, I remember, in 2021. I remember that 1 or 2 times, and now it seems like there's like, somebody got tombstone last night or something else.
Yeah, it was like one on the hub, wasn't there, in like the entire year?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and then when you have like block daemon doing 2 on Evmos, and then on the test nets, you see them all the time. And then there was 19 on the Say test net or something like that. It's like a parade. So anyway, I mean, there's still some interesting there because, we talked about this before, but the number of validators and people getting involved is way up, but the chains are pushing a lot of change. And so that might create stalls and issues. And then you have kind of like this gap between how fast we're moving and maybe the common understanding of what's going on in some of these situations if they're just running a single node and not, using some sort of off machine signer or something like that. So yeah, it's good times. And speaking of shitty chains that are changing, the merge is tonight, right? I don't know if you guys, is anybody running?
I was going to say,
nodes.
somebody was
Is it
asking me
tonight?
earlier, just what do you think of the merge? Because they knew I worked in crypto, and I was like,
Yeah.
I only hold a couple of ETH, so I guess if chain go burr and I make some money, I'm happy.
Yeah, I'm like, who fucking cares?
We do. I think Schultz and I, we both run some Geth nodes for some. I know you run them for.
Sommelier and Gravity and Umi.
That's right. Yeah. So which require that bridge type of structure, and so that it was supposed to be like now. I think it was scheduled. I remember it was a great time. It was like 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. tonight or something like that, and now it's scheduled at 5 a.m. UTC. So anyway, I'm not sure how much I'm.
So it's when I wake
that.
up tomorrow morning to go to London.
Basically, yeah, it's going to happen around there, and the hash rate's going to
On a
shit
train.
because I'm not sure why the hash rate's going
Of
down.
course,
If
I'm on
that's
a
like
train.
people turning things off or something, I don't know what that means, but if it's that simple. But the hash rate's going to hell, which means it just keeps. So I hope it keeps going down because then it could push out to maybe the morning. That'd be great.
Well, I mean, I think the idea is there are a bunch of miners that are having an exodus, right? They're saying, piss off, I'm going to, what's it called? Proof of work ETH now or something? It's like POWI or something like that.
Yeah.
And so there's quite literally being an exodus of energy then, which is changing, slowing things down. And that, of course, is from, what's it called? The death mark or whatever, how ETH created a point where they had to improve his stake or else the reward would be so low that miners would have shut down anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway,
have they did they just fork it into POW ETH?
That's their plan. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then like, it's interesting on the ETH side because you have to run it's a beacon node. So since it's moving to POS, and I guess since there will be the possibility of a tremendous number of forks of the chain, that now there's these beacon nodes that are, I think, helping the actual consensus node figure out, hey, this is the one that you're following, like follow this one, to try to get past the merge. Because I think it's I think that's the way I understand it. But I think the idea is that it's pretty easy for this to fork into a bunch of smaller chains and get some issues going on here. So all that's running, but yeah, looks like 5 a.m. or some shit.
To bring it back to the Cosmos, there's actually already a proposal connecting proof of stake ETH to IBC DAO using CK Snarks.
Nice.
So that's pretty cool. I just tweeted about it yesterday. Jack Zamplin is on the advisory board for it. That's my understanding.
That's good stuff.
Which makes me curious about what does this mean for Gravity or Axelar, right? Because suddenly they kind of are relevant. If IBC is already connecting, then why do those need to exist anymore?
Right. Yeah. Why do you need that kind of a little bit clunky bridge structure, right? With intermediate wallets and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I guess you don't. If ETH connects, then see you later bridges, right?
If it works out, yeah. I mean, I for one am for that. I hate to say, let's unemploy or at least. I mean, the idea would be Gravity, Justin from Gravity would go do something else and Cosmos would have you. But it is kind of unfortunate. Yeah, down with bridges. Yeah. So it's an unfortunate reality of a chain going away for the greater good, I guess.
I actually have a question for everybody with regards to stablecoin, right? So there needs to be, I think there needs to be a stablecoin that is not a fucking algorithmic stablecoin, like a proper, centralized dollar-backed stablecoin in the Cosmos at some point, right? So, nothing against the algorithmic stablecoins, but really the only one that is really pegged to a US dollar is the ones that are actually backed by a US dollar.
Mhm.
That said, do you guys think that it should be a CW20 or an IBC token with its own chain?